Hey guys, it's Jarrad Horsley with eXp Realty, putting this quick webinar together for you to hopefully educate you on what the buying process is looking like right now. It's certainly strange. It's almost like our current weather patterns. 70 degrees in February, no snow, and so far, a warm winter compared to what we're used to. But anyways, to kind of jump into the content, I wanted to talk about a few things that are in our real estate contract, specifically the Eastern Connecticut Board Association contract, which if you're working with myself, that's the contract that we would use. If we were working with, let's say, an out-of-county agent who brings their contract to us, it may be a little bit different. There is a Greater Hartford board and a couple other boards, and everyone has their own contracts. But anyways, we're going to talk about what we know the best, what is most commonly used, and things within that contract that you need to be aware of. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is something that's called a contingency. So what is a contingency? A contingency is something that's written in the contract to protect one party or another. Specifically, a buyer's contingency would be along the lines of what we would call a mortgage commitment, an inspection contingency, an appraisal contingency. There's even a final walkthrough contingency, but that one's not really something that we need to talk about in this video. So let's start with the mortgage commitment. That's something that essentially, you're giving a seller a date and you're saying, hey, Mr. Seller, I'm going to have my mortgage ready by such and such date. Maybe it's 4 weeks, 35 days, maybe it's even 21 days, depending on how quick your closing is on the contract. The one thing that you can do to help your case when it comes to writing the contract, because what we want to talk about in this video is how to win the contract, right? Right now, there's multiple offers out there again where I'm seeing well over $20,000 bids on properties. People are waiving inspections again, even if the property has well and septic, which if you've worked with me in the past or you have, been referred to me, you'll know I never recommend to my clients, hey, let's waive the home inspection, let's waive the well, let's waive the septic, right? Some homes it's easy to waive the general home inspection, but when it comes to well and septic, I always tell people it's not really worth the risk, because those are big money items if something goes wrong, and you're not going to want to fix it when you see the bill. So anyways, we have the first contingency, which we were talking about, which was the mortgage commitment date. One way that you can strengthen the offer, speak to your lender. I know a lot of lenders have these specific programs. Essentially what they do is they will give you a full approval. So, when they run your credit, when they run your debts, basically you get all your documents and your ducks in a row where your lender can say, hey, look, this is a legit borrower. There's no reason we're going to have an issue getting him his money for whatever home that he wants, he or she, and that's it. So you get your approval on the spot, meaning you're ready to go once an appraisal is ordered and everything looks good. The next contingency, which we were just talking about a little bit, is the inspections. So I don't generally recommend that you waive inspections. However, home inspectors are paid to find anything wrong with a home. So you may pay for a home inspection, and the only thing that the home inspector finds, maybe it's a loose tread on a staircase, right? It's making a bunch of noise. Or maybe the handle on the refrigerator is loose and it needs to be tightened up. These are little things that some inspectors will find, and they will not so much make a huge fuss depending on who it is, but you have to remember you're paying them and they are working for you. So even if nothing's wrong with the home, 99% of the time, they are going to give you the impression that something is wrong with the home and you need to have it fixed. All right. So with the home inspection, certain homes it makes sense to waive, other homes it does not. When it comes to, a newer home where you can definitely tell it's been well kept, that's something that I would be comfortable waiving. When it comes to a home that has a well and septic, those tend to be homes that I would not want to waive the contingency for, because you could have a septic that seems to be operating just fine until they go through it with a camera and they say, hey, you have a huge crack in your tank. That's one issue you may have. Or another issue may be, maybe the leaching fields aren't working properly and now you have to dig up half the yard to replace the fields. And, maybe that's a $5,000 fix, maybe that's a $15,000 fix, depending on what they need to do and how they need to get it into the existing system. When you get into well and septic, things get sticky. Wells aren't nearly as expensive as septics. They can be as much of a headache, though. So those are generally things that I tell my people, hey, look, I would myself feel a lot more comfortable if you had these things looked at and we can make sure that they're operational. I understand some people's situations are different and they may be absolutely desperate for a house, so maybe you have to waive these things. But I always want to do what's best for my clients, and in my expertise, a well and septic inspection is something that should never be waived. If you have a home that's on public water, public sewer, that's a different story. That's great. That means we don't have to worry about those two big ticket items, and we don't have to worry about a $20,000 to $40,000 replacement down the road or right as you close. So the next thing that is on the contract as a contingency is the appraisal. So we're going to keep this easy. Let's say a house is listed for $280,000. You write them an offer for $300,000. Okay. Let's say the $300,000 is the best offer that comes in. Now, they may be skeptical to take that $300,000 if they don't think the home is going to appraise, and maybe there's a cash offer for $290,000. So one thing that we can incorporate, and it really should be incorporated regardless of if we think it's going to appraise or not, because it just takes the risk off the table completely. So it's called an appraisal gap. And appraisal gap coverage is you're willing to put a certain amount of cash to the side and say, hey, look, I have this $10,000 sitting right here. If something were to happen and the house were not to appraise where I think it's going to appraise. So let's say the house appraises at $290,000. You have an offer for $300,000, but you incorporated that big stack of $10,000 that's imaginary in my hand right now. So essentially, the seller's getting his full $300,000 that's on the purchase and sale contract. Now, that's big, again, because it takes the risk off of the seller. They know exactly what they're going to get. And the reality is now you're able to compete with a cash buyer. And that is very, very important in this market, with people offering well over asking price, $20,000, $30,000. I've seen offers as high. I'm not going to say I've seen. I have written offers higher than $75,000 on the list price. So I know it happens. I see it all the time. Right now, specifically, I am seeing it on every property for the most part, especially the properties that are brand new to the market. You're not really seeing so much going on with the properties that are still sitting, but the properties that are still sitting are sitting for a reason. And the reality is, if you see those properties, you're probably not going to want to put an offer on them either. So that's pretty much it. like I stated earlier, there is a final walkthrough contingency, but it's not something to really consider. Things happen at the walkthrough all the time, and attorney's going to argue. Anything can be done to resolve whatever the issue may be. But anyways, those are the 3 most important contingencies. Those are how we can leverage those in your contract to make it stand out. If you have any other questions about the content, feel free to leave a question on the webinar for me. Feel free to shoot me an email, send me a text, a Facebook, Instagram message, whatever it may be. I'll always get back to you. My number is 860-300-0146, and I'll see you guys in the next video.